Γεια σου, Νίκο.
Καλησπέρα.
Καλησπέρα.
Hello, Michael. Happy to see you.
Hello, Natalia.
Haven't seen for a while, yes.
Yes.
John, should we start probably? Because I think we got the majority of people in and probably, yes.
Hi, Miltos. Γεια σου.
Hello, Professor Skoudos.
All right. So, Natalia, if you tell me, I will begin.
Yes, John, please start. I think we're more or less complete, and we still, of course, accept the kind of latecomers. But for the sake of time, yes, please begin. Thank you.
Hello. Hello, everyone. My name is John Liu, and I'm very happy to welcome you to this very important event. Today, we're going to talk about some of the activities of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, especially around education. And the organizations that are involved are UNESCO, the Foundation for Environmental Education, and, oh dear, the North American Association for Environmental Education, the Youth United Nations Global Alliance, the University of Oxford, and UNEP. So we're going to have a number of presentations which are going to share with you very, very important aspects. And I'm not sure who's going to speak after me. I don't have an absolute list, but maybe you could help me, Natalia or Yusuf.
John, I would be shortly opening after you, and then I would pass to Yusuf and also Jean-Philippe.
Okay, well then, I can tell you that we're very proud that the United Nations Decade on Ecosystem Restoration has reached this milestone, and that during this decade, we look forward to engaging more and more people in ecosystem restoration. So Natalia, why don't you carry on?
Thank you very much, John. I would like to welcome all the partners, and I see the partners and the participants are still coming, but that's really good number already now. I would be very short because I don't want really to steal more time from substantive discussions during the session. I would like to open on the behalf of the decade and really congratulate you with the progress we made so far. And probably some of you have been following already what we've been doing last year. And I would like just to underline that we got 10 flagships which were selected and then announced at the CBD COP15 in Montreal. And some of you have been there at the Restoration Day, so I've been happy also to see you in person also in Montreal. And building, of course, on these flagships and success and discussions, we're moving with lots of other activities around. And one of another kind of flagship, so-called, it's the action plan, which has been developed at the moment. And as John already mentioned, this particular event and this so-called education challenge is a part of this action plan, which has also been developed by the partners and in a kind of very close partnership with all the actors and all the stakeholders involved. So we would like really to see the commitments and the vision, also how the decade should be unpacking on different aspects, including also education. So today's session is basically to provide you this opportunity and to shape also the discussions within this action plan and the kind of also wider decade's framework for the next years to come. So once more, welcome. And John, then probably I would pass the floor to Yusuf and Jean-Philippe for more detailed presentation on the action plan and related activities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Natalia. Thank you so much, John. I know it's very early, I think 4 a.m. for you, so I hope you had your coffee. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Jean-Philippe Salcedo, and I work as Partnership Coordinator of the UN Decade. I have the honor to very quickly put a bit of context. That is basically what are we talking about with the ecosystem restoration challenges under the UN Decade, of which we hear today. The first one on education. Now, I hope you can see my screen.
Yep.
Restoration challenges. No, not yet.
No, just because it's not big good enough.
See, that is strange.
Yes, you can see.
Ah, fantastic. Great. So restoration challenges, basically they represent 12 key thematic areas, which the partner of the UN Decade, and that is over 200, have jointly identified as key areas for a global restoration movement, but also for this movement to contribute very clearly to international goals from the Kunming-Montreal Framework for Biodiversity or the Rio Convention targets to the SDGs. And who am I referring to with partner network? That is actually over 200 entities from across the globe. And they range from global entities to nothing less than what we call actors for the UN Decade. And actors are organization, companies, association that are really at the forefront and restoring our ecosystems on the ground or in the sea. The map, by the way, that you see represent the partners' legal seats. So hence there are some gaps that we do need to fill, but of course the network is more than present and working in all corners of the planet. Now, challenges are at the heart of an action plan, and that action plan allows for the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration to move from strategy to action by setting very ambitious challenge targets on the one hand, and putting these together with calls to action to different stakeholders on the table. It is key that we know that these are led by partners. They allow partners to collaborate, not only specifically on these thematic areas, but individual partners really do take the lead for the different challenges and in an inclusive and transparent manner. And when I say inclusive and transparent, that really means by inviting other partners and to become partners to join. Now, we will see the formal approval of this action plan and the challenge leads next month. And with it, we are facing a really fascinating series of learning sessions on each of the different challenges throughout the year 2023. So I'm absolutely thrilled that today is the very first one, and that we start with the education challenge is really not by chance. I am not going through these challenges in detail, but let me highlight that I can promise that they are not only exciting, but many are real game changers in their respective thematic area, ranging from establishing the Earth's longest biodiversity corridor, for example, or 100 championing restoration cities, to, let's take another example, achieving land degradation neutrality by 2030. Again, only examples, there is much more in there. So I invite you, and I'm reaching the end, I invite you to stay up to date on these challenges, on their developments. If you're not yet a partner, then please consider becoming one. And for every individual joining us today, please don't forget to sign up to the newsletter. Please reach out if you're interested in becoming a partner. I just had the chance to look at the RSVPs. It indicated that some 60% of the many participants today are not yet directly affiliated. That means we can really use this also to have more partners on board and more partners working with us on these challenges. But for now, I pass over to the challenge leads, to the experts. Again, we are absolutely thrilled. A big thank you to all the presenters, to all the challenge leads, to the speakers, and of course, to all the participants. So big thank you, and over to you, John.
Well, I think we're actually going to Yusuf and Dorian now. Is that correct? or not.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, John. We'll be having the presentation from the challenge lead as you've gotten from your brief note. So the first speaker will be Bernard Combe from UNESCO. So I would like to hand over to you.
Well, good afternoon, good morning, good day, wherever you are. So I'm Bernard Combe from UNESCO headquarters. I'm one of the co-leads for the education for ecosystem restoration challenge, and I will share my screen to share a couple of slides. You should be able to see it.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So this education challenge, we've decided to take on the greater goal of ensuring that ecosystem restoration is embedded in both formal and non-formal education systems throughout the world, in every country around the world by 2030. Quite a challenge to to move things along, but that meets with some of UNESCO's goals of including, integrating, mainstreaming environmental and climate action into all education systems by 2030. It also builds on the follow-up of the UN Transforming Education Summit that took place in mid-September. One of the elements that came out of that summit is called the Greening Education Partnership, which has 4 pillars, and one pillar is greening communities, which include the issue of ensuring that, in part, ecosystems are maintained, but also are restored. Because as communities include cities, and as we know, most cities are more cement than they are green, so we need to reverse that tendency. Just to quickly introduce the 3 co-leads, I'll come back to UNESCO. I'll start by the Foundation on Environmental Education, FEE, which has a network of over 100 NGOs in 82 countries around the world. FEE runs a number of programs. Some of them you would be familiar with, the Eco Schools, for instance. In particular, we will do a lot with the Eco Schools in this challenge, but FEE also runs other programs that can contribute to this challenge. One of them is the Young Reporters for the Environment, a program to encourage teenagers, high schoolers, and young people to actually go out and document what's happening in terms of environmental needs, environmental problems in their local communities. The other partner is the North American Association for Environmental Education that brings together environmental educators, meaning people who are both in the formal education system and also in the non-formal one, to work together to exchange, to look at how to better integrate environmental education in what we all do. They also run something called the Global Environmental Education Partnership, which has one element of it is a website that has country profiles on environmental education for sustainable development in different countries around the world. Then finally, UNESCO, which I represent. We are the multidisciplinary agency of the UN system. Because most people, when you say UNESCO, they think, okay, education, or they think World Heritage. Well, we're more than that. We're also science, natural, exact sciences. We're also social sciences. We're also communication, and we're also culture. And in everything we do in terms of environmental education, we bring all those perspectives together. We also have a network of more than 1,200 schools around the world, and we also have a network of UNESCO sites. These are Biosphere Reserve, World Heritage Natural Sites, and geoparks, where we intend to tackle some of the ecosystem restoration challenges. As I said, we are quite ambitious. We want to basically create a framework that can be adjusted to different contexts to show how to actually do this educating on ecosystem restoration in the various educational and learning environments, because we take education, the view that it's a lifelong and a life-wide process. You can be any age to be part of this. And so it means that we need to mobilize various stakeholders. We need to develop resources to explain all that. We need to also pilot activities in both formal and non-formal sites. We also need to do some encouraging of countries and ministries to ensure that they actually put ecosystem restoration in their national education programs. Currently, I would say you will find probably mention of ecosystem, but ecosystem restoration, not that often, which means that some of the outputs we are working towards include doing a report of, where do we stand in terms of ecosystem restoration or education around the world, and then also to develop this kind of framework to place your actions around, including some methodology, some advocacy, some sharing some good practices to be able to go out there and be more effective. So some of our outcomes that we hope to attain, of course, first one is increasing awareness about the decade, notably among environmental education NGOs and other groups. Clearly, to push for ecosystem restoration education to be part of education programs, but also part of the SDG target 4.7, which is in part about the education for sustainable development, and then to create synergies with other processes, which include the UNESCO-led ones, which are the ESD for 2030 framework and the Greening Education Partnership I mentioned. And then, of course, to create resources to help various stakeholders to support these goals. We have put together a timeline to get us to 2030. This is a timeline that will evolve with time as we go along. Some things might come together quicker than others, because part of it is the first part is that we want to establish an advisory board, an international advisory board, to help guide what we're trying to do, but also it's clear that to do all this, we will need funding. So we need to also mobilize, whether these are funds or in-kind contributions from different partners, from different stakeholders to move this along. One of the first exercises we're going to carry out is to do this a mapping of what's out there, what is already being done, and then to use that to develop this fundraising proposal, because clearly if we want to integrate ecosystem restoration into all learning situation, we are going to need some resources, both human and financial, to do that. And we're going to need people, organization to help us with that. We are very happy to be part of this learning session. And we see that what the other two presentations will be things that will complement what we are trying to do. As I said, we are focusing more on K-12. So it's nice to see that one of the presentations today will be about universities. And then we also about developing resources and tools. So it's nice to see that the YUNGA Challenge Badge is one of the other presentation, because these are clearly things where we are already going to have interaction with these other challenges, but at the same time we need to expand that to finding people, finding organizations that want to mobilize around this and are willing to get themselves involved. So as I said, we are the 3 co-leads. Please reach out to us so that we can start some dialogue with you to see how to go further along. Back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernardo, for that wonderful presentation. I would like to hand over to John to introduce the next presentation.
Which one is that? Yes, which one is that, Youssef?
That will be launching of restoration by challenge by YUNGA April.
And that's Oysin?
Yes, Oysin.
That's correct.
Oysin, thank you so much. Well, this is exciting. We're moving to the next level. So Oysin, please introduce your project.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that, John, and thanks to Youssef, to Jean-Philippe, Dorian, Natalia as well for organizing this learning session. It's so great to see so many people here. So yeah, as was mentioned, I'm going to be sharing a presentation on ourselves at YUNGA. So bear with me while I just pull up the presentation. Okay, so hopefully you should be seeing that now. So yeah, as Bernard just mentioned as well, we do see some linkages between between ourselves, our challenge, and the other challenges as well. So hopefully, what we're doing here with YUNGA, with this challenge badge, will be able to feed into some of the other challenges as well. So we look forward to those linkages. But yeah, from ourselves at YUNGA. So an introduction to YUNGA. YUNGA, the Youth in the United Nations Global Alliance, is an alliance of UN agencies, non-governmental organizations, civil society organizations, and other educational entities delivering youth educational materials. So we are hosted by FAO, so that's the linkage between the Food and Agricultural Organization and YUNGA. And we act really as a gateway for young people into the activities, the initiatives of UN agencies. So we're formed in 2009 and since then have grown and deliver educational materials across the world. So just have a look at some of our other projects and initiatives across the world. So one of our key partners is the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts. And this project that is sort of co-led by WAGS is the Girl-Led Action on Climate Change. So this project is empowering, giving young women across the sub-Saharan African region the ability, the capacity, and the experience and the skills to be able to take action locally in their communities on climate change. So this has, as you can see here, we worked with and empowered 77,000 young girls in the region. But not only this, we also give young women the opportunity to use their knowledge and their skill set, and then to put pressure on politicians at the highest level. So some women will be given the opportunity to attend large international conferences such as COP. Other materials that we have are youth guides. So these guides are written in languages that are accessible to young people from the ages to 11 to 16, and they're a resource to inform on several different topics such as ocean, forests, biodiversity. So these are also available, and they're written and reviewed by content experts. But yeah, coming on to our challenge badges. So this is one of our flagship initiatives that we have in YUNGA. So as I mentioned, our key partners, one of them being the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts, the other one being the World Organization of Scouts, Move and Help deliver these badges across the world. So ranging on several different topics, all relating to the Sustainable Development Goals. So by the end of all the development of these badges, we'll have one badge or two badges specifically tailored for each of the 17 SDGs. And as you can see, there's several different topics such as agriculture, biodiversity, climate change, disaster risk reduction. And since 2009, we have engaged through World Organization of Scouts Movement 50 million young people, and through the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts 10 million. So it's really a global initiative, and it's something that we're working on developing this partnership and collaboration. So onto the badge structure itself. So just before we get into the UN Decade Badge, I want to give an overview of what this actually looks like. So the badges are set up in two sections. So you've got background information on all of the topics. So background information on several different topics, and that's broken down into subsections. This background information is generally used by maybe the educators or some of the older students that are taking the badges. So we break it down further into three target age groups. So similar to the presentation from Bernard, working through K through 12 age group. So we've got three different age groups. So 5 to 10 years old, 11 to 15, and then 16 plus. So this background information is used to guide the lessons, to guide the lesson plans, to guide the curriculum, and also for young people as well if they want to read up on the background information. Then we move to our sort of activities section. So this is where the real sort of learning and empowerment and capacity building really comes into play. So each of the subsections in the background information will have an adjacent activities section. So the activity section is then broken down into compulsory activities and then optional activities. So to get your badge, your completion of your challenge badge, you must complete one compulsory activity in each section, plus one optional activity. Once completed in all of the section, you will have completed your badge. So these activities are broken down into the different age groups. So if you're an NGO that works with just primarily younger people, there are activities that are just allocated for this age group. But this is one of the main things that we try and work on within YUNGA, is creating behavioral change. So we know that traditional educational methods of providing education and awareness alone does not necessarily create the behavior change that we're looking for. So for in this instance, to conserve and then restore ecosystems. So just by giving information alone, it doesn't necessarily create that. It doesn't necessarily create that behavior change. So we work on 9 specific steps. Each of the activities within the challenge badges, each of these activities are related to creating behavioral change, or one of the 9 steps. So for example, specific achievable behavioral change, like what can we do within one activity that will be specific to changing young people's behavior. Action planning and empowerment is really, really important, in addition to tackling barriers to action. So this tackling barrier to action sort of is linked with the previous one, action planning. Like how can we foresee some of the challenges that we will have with taking out some of the activities or taking on some of the activities, and then be able to work around them or to implement something different. Then one of the really, really important things for this challenge badge is spending time outdoors. So we know that with behavioral change, one of the biggest indicators to behavioral change is the ability, or is your own willingness to change your behavior. So how likely are you? How much do you care about the subject that you are willing to change your behavior? And that is one of the biggest indicators to behavioral change. So spending time in nature, spending time outdoors in different ecosystems, wherever they may be, if it's an urban ecosystem or grassland by the ocean, sea, no matter where, that's one of the most important things. And giving young people a sense of nature and a closeness to nature, as well as other different aspects of behavioral change. So getting your community involved, and it's something we try and bring in quite a lot through this challenge badge, making commitments, and then celebrating some of the success. Excuse me. As well as leading by example. So onto this challenge badge, and this one specifically. So our key partners, as I mentioned, are both the Girl Guides and Girl Scouts Association, as well as the Scout Movement, but also the World Food Forum, the education track, which is also hosted by FAO. So we've had some expertise from the Youth Scientist Group for this badge specifically, also some input from Bernard, from UNESCO, as well as the Youth Task Force for the UN Decade. So really sort of bringing together different expertise to develop this badge as we move forward. So the four different, as I mentioned there, where the challenge badges are broken up into different sections. So the four different sections that we have chosen for this challenge badge, which will have background information plus activities related to each, is understanding ecosystems. So the basics of what ecosystems are, what's involved, what are the connections, linkages, and then moving on to the threats to ecosystems. So what are the threats that each ecosystem is facing? Why are these such a big issue? And then moving on to how we can tackle these issues. What are the methods, the tools that are out there for ecosystem restoration? How can young people be involved in ecosystem restoration and those? And then taking action. So taking action in your own community, globally, and then being connected to that global network as well. So this is all broken down into these four sections, but using simple language that is understandable, digestible for young people. So some of the background information that we used in developing this challenge badge itself was the global ecosystem typology. So we've got 8 different ecosystems there that we focus on that sort of cover a broad range. So from forests, mountains, grasslands, savannas, oceans, coasts, farmlands, peatlands, urban ecosystems, and then freshwater. And then also including some of the ecosystem restoration, the 10 principles there, and breaking this down into easily digestible information, and then sort of trying to get across the ecosystem restoration continuum that's delivered through the Society for Ecological Restoration. So we're going to stop here. I'm going to stop sharing, but I'm going to put a link into a chat to a little game from this challenge badge itself, so we can get a sense of what it's like. Now, this game is adapted to the online format, but I will talk you through it just briefly, if you allow me. So yeah, I'm going to pop a link into this chat here, and bear with me 2 seconds. So for those of you who can, please do, but I will be joined, but I will be sharing my screen as well, so that everybody will be able to see if they can't. So please do join that link. I'm going to share my screen as well, so everybody can see what we're looking at. So if you can access that, you should be able to pop in. So I see some people coming in. So this is great. So this is one of the activities that's in section A of our challenge badge. So I won't tell you the name because it'll probably give away the game. But what you see in front of you, and hopefully you can see all of these, is components of a certain ecosystem. Okay, and then maybe we'll have a guess, and people can unmute and say what ecosystem it is, what ecosystem they think it is. So what I want you to do, so if you look over here, you've got these shapes and connectors. So there's a line over here on the left, top left of your screen. So if you click that, you'll be able to draw one line from one part all the way to the other part. So what I want you to do is just connect some of components of this ecosystem that are linked together, just drawing a line. So top left, if you click here, you can draw, you'll be able to draw like a mouse to some grass, for example. So what are all the different linkages? So hopefully we might start seeing some connections there. So a mouse to sun, mouse to a hawk, for example. Yep. So if we can start, so we got some tree to dead leaves, exactly. So we got a squirrel, but it was a red squirrel to a tree, perfect. So this is starting to take shape. So what we'll see here is what is going to start to look like what we'll call a web of life. You know, so this is all of the different components of an ecosystem and how they're all connected in this big web. So for young people, and really what you want to do is like have this in an outside an ecosystem and bring them there, let them sort of map all of the different components that they can see, and then sort of bring this together. And you can use a piece of string, and then this sort of gets across that idea that everything is connected, and it's bringing in that idea of behavior change, that you know, spending time outdoors, really getting to understand what is there, how is everything connected. And then what we can do then is maybe take away one aspect or one component of this. So if I was to take away the bird, for example, the hawk here, see how many of the connections would disappear, and then how that would fall apart in this ecosystem. So that's a small little game, and then obviously we can move across and you can sort of pull in. I see some people already pulling in which sort of trophic level they're at. Exactly. So that's the idea. And like I said, it's adapted to the online version, but you can do this in person as well. So I'm going to stop sharing again. So thank you so much for that. I'm going to go back to my presentation briefly. Sorry. And I'll finish up shortly. So yeah, so thanks a lot for playing along. So that's called the Web of Life, and that's in the section A on understanding ecosystem. So it's trying to get young people involved. So once you come along with to YUNGA, you're interested in developing some of these challenge badges, we'll be able to support you with whatever curriculum the needs you have in developing the curriculum based on the ecosystem restoration challenge badge. You'll also be introduced to a network of partners, so similar other organizations. We're trying to map all the organizations that will be delivering the ecosystem restoration badge, and then sort of connecting them and seeing different parts of the world. But also expertise from ourselves, from the different partners that are mentioned previously, and that support. These challenge badges are available in a number of languages. So for several of them, we have several languages, so main UN languages. So for now, what we're hoping to do, so please do contact us. So what we'd like to do is offer NGOs, different organizations, the ability to pilot test this badge. So we really want to make it something that's really strong. We've developed it with experts, like as you've seen, some of the key partners earlier. But we need now other organizations to test out these activities, to see what works, to see what doesn't work, and then to sort of start to grow that network that is taking action on the ecosystem restoration and becoming generation restoration. So please do contact YUNGA. We'll be able to get back to any interested parties that want to pilot test. So thanks a lot, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Oisin, for that wonderful presentation. And it is very good to know that young people can get involved through the Web of Life and the Restoration Challenge badge. And it's also interesting to know that we have to follow the behavioral changes, and through the behavioral changes, moving to the action planning, to tackling the barriers, and also to leading by example. So thank you very much for that wonderful presentation once again. And right now we'll be moving to the next thing on the agenda, which is the launching of Global Network of Nature Positive Universities. This is going to be presented by Karina Michelle and Emily Stott And Karina is Youth and Education Officer of United Nations Environment Program, and Emily is the Nature Positive University Coordinator from the University of Oxford. And I would like to give them the floor. Over to you, Karina.
Thank you so much, Yusuf. Hi, everyone. It's really great to be here today. Thanks so much for having us. I'm just going to do a really quick intro to give a bit of background on this initiative, and then I'll hand over to Emily, who will give you a bit more info on what we're up to. So as Yusuf mentioned, I'm Karina Michelli, and I work in UNEP's Youth and Education team. And at UNEP, we work on education through formal and non-formal education channels. And on the formal side, we mainly work with universities specifically. So we have been doing work through this Youth and Education Alliance with university partners around the world, working on decarbonizing universities, working on sustainable behavior change, and a range of other initiatives. And we just really wanted to see what more we could do in sort of the nature and biodiversity space, especially with the decade on ecosystem restoration taking place, and also UNEP's medium-term strategy having a really strong focus on three key pillars around climate, pollution, and nature. And so nature, we really wanted to see what more we could do there with our higher ed partners. And then we came across the University of Oxford, which has been doing some really impressive work around measuring their own impact on biodiversity and seeing how they can reduce this. Which then led us to having a lot of really great, interesting conversations to see how we could come together and bring more universities on this journey with us. So this basically led us to co-launching the Nature Positive Universities Network together. And we now have, the broader network has over 400 or 500 universities that are part of this, with a range of students involved as well, which is really exciting to see how it's really grown and the great energy that's behind it. And we're really excited to also be part of the UN Decade and the Education Challenge here, alongside the others that are doing really incredible work. So that's kind of the really quick background to how we sort of started this alliance. And I'll just hand over to Emily now, who runs the network, to share a bit more around where we're at, what we do, and where we're headed. So thank you so much, and over to you, Emily.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Can you share my slides? Is that someone who's going to share my slides? Yeah, perfect.
Can you see the screen?
So do you want me to share my own slides, or you're going to share for me?
No, it's actually loading, actually.
Oh, perfect. So thank you so much. So should I get started talking, and then the slides can come when they're ready? That's fine. So yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity to present to you. As Karina mentioned, Nature Positive Universities is a partnership between University of Oxford and UNEP, but it's now also a partnership with all of our members. So we have over 600 universities in our network. Here we go. Yeah, so can we go on to the next slide? Perfect. So yeah, the first question, what is Nature Positive? And this is one of, okay. Is that fine? Can I go to the second slide? Thank you so much. So Nature Positive, how to define it. This is a really kind of tricky issue, but we think it's a really important thing to get right, so that it's not used in the wrong way and not kind of greenwashed. So we're really focusing on this kind of global goal for nature that we think universities have a great chance to get behind and kind of lead the way on how you can do this properly. So we're defining Nature Positive, meaning restoring the species and ecosystems harmed by the impacts of a university and its activities, and enhancing its positive impacts on nature. So this came about after University of Oxford set 2 high-level targets for the whole institution. So net zero carbon on one hand, and also biodiversity net gain on the other. So really putting biodiversity up there as a target at an institutional level. If you look at this graph, which you may be familiar with, that little red dot at 2030, that's what we're really trying to aim towards, sort of bending that curve on biodiversity loss and put us back on track to having restored ecosystems. Next slide, please. So how did we do this? We started at University of Oxford by looking in detail at our biodiversity impacts. And what we found was that the biodiversity present on campus was just a fraction of the biodiversity sort of impacted by our activities. So by looking at all the things that a university does in its activities, we actually found that the resources and waste associated with our laboratory use and our operations, things like the paper we use, the laptops, the things that supply our labs, but also the food we consume, all the activities that a university does. These are actually a sort of huge part of our impact. And if you look at the natural environment segment there, it's just, you know, maybe sort of 10% of the overall impact, a bit like for carbon, that our biodiversity impacts are often associated with our supply chains, or sort of indirect. So how we are going about tackling these is we're using the 4 R's conservation hierarchy, which you can see in the green box, starting with refrain, avoiding any actions that you can that are harmful, starting by refraining, then reducing what is possible. And finally, you get to the kind of core functions of your university that you can't reduce. And so then you need to kind of mitigate for that, commit to nature restoration to sort of make up for that leftover impact. Next slide, please. So this is where we kind of reached out, and we are inviting other universities to come on this journey with us. And so we've designed this Nature Positive Pledge, which we launched at COP15 in Montreal in December. And we've had a really exciting sort of enthusiasm behind universities taking up this challenge. So this is asking for universities at a management level to commit to looking at their biodiversity impacts, carrying out a baseline, setting targets, actions, and then reporting each year on their progress. And it's purposefully flexible. So we're not asking everybody to do a very detailed survey of all of their possible impacts, but it's starting with what you can. It could be looking at what's on your campus already and making a plan to increase that and report publicly each way. And we feel like universities have a great potential to be sort of beacons in their community, looking at their impacts and communicating it with their students and their communities, and really kind of leading the way transparently on how they're doing to encourage businesses and the rest of their cities to do the same kind of thing. So could we go to the next slide, please? So yeah, this is just a map of our members so far. The green dots are just all of our members. The gold dots are the ones that have made a Nature Positive pledge. So these are pledges at a high level of an institution committing to look at their biodiversity impacts. And then excitingly, we have a lot of students also interested, and we've set up a student ambassadors program. So all of those red circles are where we have students committing to take action on their campuses for nature. Next slide, please. So yeah, this is just a snapshot from our launch at COP15. We had, I think there's 125 universities now have made this kind of pledge. We just found there's a lot of momentum behind it, behind this concept of nature positive, and by trying to bend that curve by 2030 so that ecosystems become on track for being in a healthier state. So the next slide, please. So what comes next? So after this kind of commitment that we've now got a cohort of the sort of initial pioneer universities that are sort of committing to start this nature positive journey. And what we're really doing now is sharing what they've done, how they're going about it as case studies and examples, and sort of sharing guidance on how to do that, how to do a baseline study, how to put green infrastructure into your campus, how to look at your food impacts, and just sharing best practice and examples from all over this global network to really make it easier and to see what your peers are doing. So I'd really welcome any universities that are not already part of it to join with us. There's no cost involved. and you will get access to all of these kind of resources and examples. And we'd also love just to share your stories, share what you're doing, how you're doing it, and help facilitate this kind of global change. And hopefully really universities can become these kind of beacons in their communities, showing how to do things in a transparent way and sort of inspiring others just by their presence in these sort of quite often urban green spaces in a sort of otherwise in an urban environment. So we think universities have a huge potential here. Next slide, please. Yeah, so this is our student ambassador program that I mentioned. We now have around 200 students worldwide who have committed to taking action on their campuses. And how this works is we have monthly meetings on a different topic. So it might be tackling something like plastics on your campus, both looking at production of plastics and how we can avoid plastic use, but also creative ways to work with that plastic and looking at infrastructure and recycling. But also things like campus food growing on campus, or trying to have a more plant-based menu, but also things like litter picks. And our January meeting that we've just had was looking at campus biodiversity recording. So using iNaturalist and citizen science, that students worldwide can record what they see as a start to the baseline study for their campus, and then really sort of network and be inspired by the other universities and what's being spotted on those campuses. And we're developing a toolkit which is coming soon, which will give you a sort of checklist of activities to do and some examples of how to do it. Next slide, please. Yes, I won't go into all of this, but this is just a snapshot of our vision, really. Universities understanding their biodiversity impacts and sort of leading in this space. We also think there's a great potential for partnerships between universities in our network, both the universities like Oxford with a huge biodiversity impact, and then universities on the front line feeling the impacts of climate change, whether it be flooding or various impacts on nature. And we think there's a lot of potential for exchange, for networking, and potentially a grants program where universities that require resources to meet these challenges can get them through being part of the network. So really, yeah, we just encourage any universities to join with us, either by encouraging the management of your university to make a pledge, or signing up as a student ambassador, or just being in contact with us if you are a researcher working in restoration, so that you can sort of network and make use of this network. Thank you. I think that's if you go to the last slide. So yeah, you can find us at naturepositiveuniversities.net, and just do be in touch, and we'd love for you to join us. Thank you.
Fantastic.
You're on mute, Yusuf.
Well, many hearts and applause is coming for all of that. It's so wonderful. It was worth getting up super early in the morning to learn about all of these wonderful things. And going forward, I think that this is the hope that all the people on the earth can put restoration of degraded landscapes at the center of human civilization. So I'm not sure who should close this. Is that back to you? Someone in the UN? Yes.
Thank you very much, Ewan. And that was a wonderful presentation, Emily. And it's such a great thing to know that there's a lot of potentials for youth and other people who are interested in the university, nature positive universities, and to support a global restoration in our education system before 2030. So if anyone is interested in joining or making connections with Nature Positive University, please do not hesitate to reach out to the contact that has been posted in the chat box, or you can contact us directly as the Restoration Decade. So the next thing on the agenda will be the question and answer. So how time flies, we are almost there. And I would like to hand over the this session to my colleague, Dorian, to take over that session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Yusuf. You've done such a great job. And thank you so much for all the presenters that we've had. As of now, I'd like to kindly invite anyone with questions to please put them in the question box for our presenters to answer. Okay, I can see a question directed to Yunga. Oshin, maybe you could take this. And the question is on how informal education is being affected into, how restoration is being affected into informal education. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dorian. Thank you for the question. I can't see who it's from, but yeah, so we work with, like I said, our key partners in delivering material on this decade and for our other challenge badges are the Scouts movement and the Girl Guides movement. So we help develop curriculum for local context with organizations that are on the ground in different countries, based on the material that we have and in the local context, and they then these organizations then develop the material or deliver the material. So we don't deliver it ourselves, but through our challenge badge resource, we help create a curriculum, and then through local expertise of different non-formal, informal organizations, we then help you develop a locally specific badge curriculum throughout many organizations. So not just Girl Guides and Girl Scouts or Scouts, but also different NGOs across the world. And like I said, then connecting the network of different organizations that are delivering educational material on each of the specific topics. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you, Oshin. There's also a question still to you, Oshin, on how to join the YUNGA movement as an entry-level NGO.
Yeah, so please do reach out. I'll put the contact in the chat again. So if you're interested, please do reach out to the YUNGA mailbox. That will come to me. I'll be able to get in contact, and if you want to organize like an initial meeting, we can organize that. But yeah, first step, I'd say just email through YUNGA, and I'll be able to get to that and then be able to work from there. So yeah.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Please put in your questions in the question box. We have a few minutes left for the question and answer session. I can see a question in the chat from Rafiq, and he asks, how can we develop a curriculum adaptable to the North African context?
I'm happy to. Sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Oshin.
So yeah, through some of our partners that are working in the region, it could be something that if you want to connect through YUNGA, we'll be happy to then develop curriculum specific with our partners, mainly through the Girl Guides, Girl Scouts, and Scouts movement, that are already delivering some educational material. But if you're interested in the ecosystem restoration challenge, obviously we can sort of work with you on that one, and then sort of using our material and resources help you develop specific local challenge badge.
Sorry. This question will be directed to Emily, and the question is, how can we strengthen the role of scientific events held in universities to be more influential on the behavioral actions of citizens with regard to environmental concerns experienced at the local and global level?
Sorry, I'll just reread that. So how can we strengthen the role of the events to be more influential in the actions of citizens? So is that question sort of to make them less theoretical? How can we, encourage action and sort of change rather than just being an academic? Do you think is that the focus of this question?
Yes.
I guess, I mean, the thought that comes to my head is really to make these conferences not just academic, to really engage with NGOs and practitioners. So if, for example, if it was a conference on biology, but really to look at that conservation side and the restoration, and I would say to focus on interdisciplinarity. So you've got researchers in maybe biology with geography, with social science. I think social science is a really key point here, really understanding motivations and impacts and sort of why people are taking actions, not just focusing on the science itself. And obviously, if we can facilitate that through Nature Positive Universities by making connections with our network, I'm more than happy to. If you have some specific conferences, you'd like some connections with other researchers in the field or with different approaches. That would be my idea.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. We have a comment from Ifeyinwa, and he says UNESCO is doing a great job with its mandate through International Geosciences and Geopark program and the MAB program in countries using the Geopark initiatives. And he poses a question: are there innovations that can be created for environmentally degraded regions like the Niger Delta? He believes that the ugly ones should also get attention.
I like the labeling of ugly ones. Yes, there's a lot of things that are being done in geoparks or biosphere reserve or natural world heritage sites. It really, in part, it depends on what territory these sites cover. But any lessons coming from those sites can be applicable or adaptable to other. And yes, I know there's quite a bit of discussion around the delta of the Niger, in particular, due to fuel extraction and other environmental degradation. And that's to specify that UNESCO does not just focus on the nice sites, we also focus on ugly sites, including in terms of the World Heritage, there's a list of endangered World Heritage sites, which I would say in view of what has happened yesterday and today, both in Syria and Turkey, already a number of World Heritage sites in those two countries are probably going to be in the endangered list due to the damage due to the earthquake. So yes, even though we have particular sites, whatever lessons come from those, we can apply or try to apply them to other sites.
Thank you so much, Bernard. I can see very positive reactions in the chat box to all our presenters. Unless there are any other questions, I'll hand it over back to Yusuf. Please note that you can still submit your questions and they'll be answered after this session. But for now, let's move on to the next agenda item. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dorian, for leading that session. And I guess we are done for today. And we would like to have a closing remark from John to give us a closing remark for this session. Thank you very much. Over to you, John.
Well, thank you so much. I have to say that having worked in ecosystem restoration for 30 years, it makes me very happy to see how many people are taking this on and to know that through education, we're going to reach children and young people and university students to get them involved. And I think it's important to realize that we have to consider this on a planetary scale, but at the same time, we have to work locally. So if we work locally, then everyone can work on restoring where they live, and simultaneously, we're working everywhere in the world. And this is the way forward for us to ensure that the future generations will have biodiversity We're also going to have to think, and I think the universities and the schools are going to have to understand that there's a tremendous amount of toxicity from various aspects, from agricultural chemicals, from extraction and mining, from urban pollution, and from, I would say, like non-natural sort of building materials and other things. So we see this in the fires here in California. When the fires happen, then the first thing we have to worry about is massive toxicity from the building materials going into the water system. So we need to see this in a holistic way, the relationships between people and nature, and the relationships between people and people. I think there's one other thing which is hugely important, is that the value of natural ecological systems has not really been discussed too much. This is something that in education we need to think about. What is the value of a functional ecosystem? And when we look at the economic systems that we have, it's not reflected in the GDP type transactional economics. So there's quite a lot of work to do, but it's wonderful that so many people are moving this way, and we can see that in now 2 years of the ecosystem, of the UN decade on ecosystem restoration, that there has been movement, that more and more people are getting involved, and that's so exciting. And then we also have to realize that education and conceptual understanding is an analog that really we have to restore. We have physical problems to hydrology, to soil, to biodiversity, and we're going to have to work physically. So we need the knowledge in order to work effectively and efficiently, but we're going to have to realize that we can't click like and imagine that that's going to restore the ecosystems. We're going to have to do real work. And I would recommend, for instance, physically collaborating with one another to do this. We have ecosystem restoration camps now in 6 continents, and it would be wonderful to have more and more people work in living laboratories and to connect the university systems to these citizen science initiatives, so that there's monitoring and assessment and very good scientific advice. So it's very heartening for me to see this happening, and there's a lot of work to do. So this is just the beginning, and prepare for a marathon, not a sprint, because it's a long way to go to actually declare success in ecosystem restoration, but this is a very good start. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity, and for all the wonderful presenters and all the actions and the work of the United Nations. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that wonderful closing remarks, and it gives us joy to know that this is one of many sessions that we'll be having as in line with our UN Decade Action Plan in system restoration. So I'd like to thank you, especially our audience and our speakers for this for making this presence for making this present learning session a success. And thank you all once again, and happy to see you again. I think we are done for today, and unless there is any observation or any questions, so over to you, Dorian. I think you have something to say too.
Thank you, Yusuf. Once again, thank you very much. And at the end of the session, which is now, I'd like to ask everyone to please turn on your camera for a group photo. If you can, please turn on your camera. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. In the count of 3, we're going to take a photo, and I'll send the photo together with the presentations. All presentations that have been given today will be shared. Thank you all so much for your participation. All right. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. All right. Goodbye. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for doing this. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, Emily. Bye-bye.
Oh, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Yes.
Nice to see you, Daniel.
Really interesting.
Yes.